Elian, what you trying to do here?
Basically trying to promote civilians that are able to buy from America.
Okay, that's why? What's his big goal there? Take a shot, see.
To balance the nation's agriculture, commerce, and industry.
Okay, he's trying to unite our economy. That's thing one. To make sure that all three parts of our economy, agriculture, business, trade, commerce, are all working together. And by doing so, Ruby, what's he trying to do big picture with our economy?
He's trying to make sure that they're independent from British.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we are economically self-sustainable. That we are economically independent, that we can do our own thing. You shut it? Cool. That we are on our own, to get rid of the British system. That's it. Those are his goals. So it's important we understand that in this time, our economy grows significantly. We're going to have very specialized, we'll talk about this as a class we go on today, regional economies. And we need to connect them into a national market economy. Here's my regions. It's cool. Check it out. Our south, our north, our western. Then all three will have I'll show you again, very different economies that are all going to need to rely on each other to be economically successful. So the first piece is the tariff, so those three boxes. The tariff is supposed to do two things. Thing one, protect domestic industry. Make people buy American. Primarily, the big product that's being tariffed is textiles, cloth. And if people want to pay the tariff and buy overseas, that's fine. That'll give the government money. Because that tariff money goes somewhere. And that government money will then go to pay for things like infrastructure, roads, etc. The tariff is very strongly supported by northern industries. Yes, ma'am?
So then isn't just a tariff like pretty much a win-win situation for the government?
A what?
A win-win situation.
Absolutely. Because what is a tariff, guys? A tax on imports. So yeah, it's a win-win for the government because it either supports business or it gives the government money. Either you buy American or you pay the government money. So northern industries love this because it allows them to allows them to make more money, and the money that comes in is basically going to pay for more infrastructure in the north. Okay, the south and the west are largely opposed to the tariff because they're not the ones that manufacture goods. In the south and the west, what do they produce?
Raw materials.
Yeah, raw materials, crops of some sort. So for them, they look at it like, I either got to pay the government money or I got to pay more for a good made in America. So it raises their prices on both sides of things. Second piece is the bank. Bank is going to do banking things. Manage federal money. Regulate credits. Get rid of state and local banks that do their own thing. We're talking about this a lot in Jackson's presidency. A lot in Jackson's presidency. Don't worry, it's coming. And help with commerce, help with trade, help with loans, help with credit, help stabilize our new national currency. To create a smarter economy is basically what the idea is. It's supposed to avoid economic panics, even though economic panics still happen. The real opposition to the bank is going to be also in the South, some in the West. And the big argument is about to be, is it going to be constitutional or not? The South hates everything. That's not a bad argument. The worry is that you allow the people that are in charge of the bank to get rich and richer and richer, and everybody else just stays poor. The third piece makes a little more sense. I think it requires less explanation. Infrastructure. Roads, canals, harbors, eventually railroads, to make sure that our regional markets are connected. It'll be paid for not by income taxes or anything taxed on you specifically, but the tariff, that money from the tariff will go and it'll build roads and bridges and it'll be good to go. Now, the southern argument here is pretty silly, but let's talk about it for a second. If we let the federal government build a road in our state, they're going to come for our slaves. We're good. We don't need those federal government roads, canals, bridges, railroads. We don't need any of that stuff. If we let the federal government build a canal in our state, they're going to come on down on that canal and take away our slaves. It's a dumb argument, but the argument is at its very root, an argument of control. If we let the federal government control this, that's more control over our state, we have less control, they're going to take away our slaves. So in general, we don't see any big infrastructure projects in the South. They're like, no, we're good. We don't need your roads. We don't need your fancy canals. We got our cotton. We got some rivers. We got some donkeys. We're good to go. Yes, sir.
Of course, we're going to try to make a deal. Like, oh, we'll agree to this if we don't take our slaves. Why do they do that before?
Because they're trying to avoid the whole slavery argument altogether. They're trying to make the slavery argument about other things. That's why you don't see them explicitly saying, if we build the roads, they'll take our slaves, but the argument about state versus federal power, at the very root of it, is always about slavery. Yes? Better be a good question.
Was there anyone in the South who was opposed to slavery?
We'll talk about that next week, of course. So,
The slaves.
yeah, good question.
Well, I decided to take
Good question. Yes, of course. So, the problem here is it looks good on the surface, but it is an extension of federal authority over the states, which the southern states worry about by saying, if we let the federal government have this much power, they're going to take our slaves. So, big picture, this is Clay's American system. Those are the goals, those are the three pieces. So, it's important that we understand that in this time of social nationalism, era of good feelings, political nationalism, dead federalists, economic nationalism, Clay's American system, there also is judicial nationalism, because John Marshall is still important making rulings that benefit the national government over the states. So Marshall's still alive. He's still around. He's going to outlast most of these dudes. He'll serve as Chief Justice until 1835. And he is still using the Supreme Court to exert the power of the national government over the states. Now, what are the two cases that you guys already know from lectures last week that we have to know that help us understand federal power over states?
Marbury-Madison.
Marbury-Madison, which creates what?
Judicial review.
Judicial review.
Referees.
Yep. They serve as the referees. Good. And what's the one that extends this judicial review over state decisions as well?
Henry. No.
What's the one that extends judicial review over state decisions as well? We talked about it at great length Thursday after school.
Oh, Fletcher. Fletcher something.
Fletcher Peck.
Fletcher Penn.
So those are the two cases we should know at this point. One creates judicial review, the other one just extends judicial review to over the states. I'm not kidding you guys when I tell you these Marshall Court cases, they come back and they're kind of important. They're kind of important next year as well. What a concept. Yes. Go ahead. So this rejects these claims that states check the power of the national government. Who's supposed to check the power of the national government? Who knows? I hope nobody's checking you in the restroom.
No, like, Mike, like, you put me on the wall, like, checking me.
Yeah. Just make sure you don't take any heroin in the restrooms and shoot at it.
No, I'm not.
Why are you nervous?
We saw it.
Why are you sweating? Can I sweat you? So, check this though. Marshall is against any idea that states check the power of the national government. Who is supposed to check the power of the national government?
Legislative.
The national government should check the power of the national government. Right? The executive checks the legislative the executive, judicial checks both. Then it's the national government checks itself. It's not a state thing to do. States, you operate doing state things. We'll check ourselves. And as you guys know, Marshall is reaffirming this loose interpretation and using the elastic clause for all things national government-wise. So the two cases for today that are important. Case one is McCulloch versus Maryland in 1819, which is super important because he's going to say that two important things. One, yes, the bank is constitutional. The state of Maryland sues and says this bank that you put in our state is we don't want this bank. It's not constitutional. We don't need it. The state of Maryland starts taxing the national bank. Marshall rules A, the bank is constitutional, it's necessary and proper, we're keeping it. And B, sorry Maryland, you don't get to tax institutions of the national government, it goes vice versa. The federal government can tax the states don't get to tax the federal government. Right? your parents give you the rules, you don't give your parents the rules. In this analogy, the parents are the national governments, you guys are the states, that's the way it works. We'll read about this case in a second. But very important that the bank is necessary and proper, and the states don't get to tax the bank because the supremacy clause of the Constitution says all federal government institutions have supremacy over state institutions. Makes sense? Gibbons v. Ogden in 24, also super important. I'll draw you a little analogy up here. Here's the state of New York. I'm going to draw a very accurate map. Are you ready? There it is. State of New York. In New York, they have a steamboat. There it is.
Oh, cool.
If you guys want to be inspired by my art, you're welcome to take inspiration. I'll be happy to critique it if you guys create art.
Mister, why don't you teach art classes?
I'm busy teaching English, bro. I'm sorry. So, New York has a steamboat company. They give it a monopoly, so it's the only company that can operate in their own state. Is that legal? Think about it. Why not? Because it is legal. New York grants this company exclusive right to operate in New York's waters. Why is that legal?
States' rights.
Yeah, intrastate commerce. They can regulate whatever trade they want in their own state.
Yeah.
That's New York's right. That's the state's right to regulate commerce in their own state. So if I was, for example, I was selling stuff just within California, who would regulate me?
California.
California. Now, this company begins ferrying passengers also to neighboring New Jersey and saying, we have a monopoly. Only we can do this. Can they do that?
No.
No. Why not?
Different state.
Because the federal government regulates interstate commerce. So in Gibbons versus Ogden, 1824, Marshall rules no. It's the federal government that regulates all interstate commerce authority. So it reasserts this provision of the Constitution. So in both these cases, the federal government's authority is strengthened. Now you're going to read two brief excerpts. One from Marshall himself in his ruling in McCulloch versus Maryland about the bank. The second from Spencer Roane. He's a newspaper editor from Richmond, Virginia. So I'm going to have you read them both side by side and quickly. And just tell me underneath, how do the two of them view the role of the federal government differently? What does Marshall think about the federal government? You should know that already. What does Roane think, and what impact does that have on the debates about power of government? So I'm going to give you 5 for them both, because they're very short and right to the point. You're going to read and respond, and we'll go from there. Time's ticking. Get reading. Read it. How do they differ? How do arguments differ on the role of the government? About 90 or so seconds left. And he's saying it's not, because nowhere in the Constitution can give the government power to make things. So obviously a very strict interpretation. All right, so take one, please, for the person next to you, and try to break down how are these two viewing the role of the government, the Constitution, the bank, big picture. How are they interpreting things differently, and what impact does it have on the role of the government? 1 minute, chat it out, go from there. Go. Ah, yes. Ah, yes.
Alright, so Marshall claims that the states cannot control the federal government and that states are meant to be ruled by the federal government. But Spencer Rowan is saying that the Constitution only limits the power of the federal government and that it only gave the federal government enough power to operate. And that the elastic clause should be used in only
Some of you guys have some really good things to say. Slane, what is Marshall's big argument here? Because this hits a couple of the constitutional things we've been talking about in this class thus far. Just, you can give me both if you want to be a overachiever. I dig that. Overachieve me up, girl.
Well, pretty much, I was talking to Lydia that Marshall's argument was that the people accepted the Constitution and what was in the Constitution, therefore they can't oppose to what the government is trying to enforce.
What theory is Marshall professing? Loose interpretation. Which theory, though? Contract. Yeah, the people made the government. The people picked the government. People made the government powers, and the government's using those powers to create a bank. Like, what's unconstitutional about that? Very loose interpretation. Yeah. Very necessary is that the bank is necessary and proper, so elastic way. Create yourself a bank. Go wild. Go crazy. Go crazy. Generally, what is Rowan's argument against the bank?
Ron is saying that the Constitution limits the power of the federal government.
So who should be able to make banks?
States.
The states. Rowan is saying, whoa. The Constitution gives very limited powers to the federal government and reserves everything else for the states. That's what the 10th Amendment says. Therefore, since it doesn't say we can create a bank, that's a state decision. Question for you. Who's right?
It depends on how you view it.
Who's right? Cortez, who's right? Both. I would argue that it matters if you trust a newspaper editor or the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And in this case, this guy's got some power. This guy doesn't. So we're going to go with John Marshall. But yeah, it's not a matter of right, it's a matter of power. And in this case, Marshall has the power to make decisions. So we have our bank. It is constitutional. And that issue is now considered settled law. Settled law. So all of this helps contribute us to a place what we call the market revolution. And the only big thing I need you to know about why it's called that and what's the big change is this. It's a change in American society from subsistence farming, from growing and making what you can for yourself, to selling what you grow and make to a larger market. I don't mean like at a supermarket, El Super, not like that, but rather creating stuff for markets elsewhere. Trader Joe's, there you go. Whole Foods? I mean, I cannot afford Whole Foods, bro.
Aldi.
Aldi's got that good deal. Absolutely. Original just name stores now. Cool. So now it's about making things for markets, selling stuff far away. Instead of old American economy, I grow what I can, I barter for what I can't. Now I grow and create as much as I can to sell elsewhere. A much more interconnected economy. We see more infrastructure, more corporations, more factories, more economic advancement, all off of this idea of changing markets. You're fine. All I should do is write down an answer with the question on top. Good boy. Cry too much. Pay more attention, right faster. You're all right. So, the two things that are the industrial breakthroughs we need, the first is steam power. This is what separates the market revolution from the industrial revolution. Steam here. Who knows what the next one's for? Oil. Yeah. So steam power and the factory system. Machines that create goods in a more manufactured type process. These are two things that we just basically steal from Great Britain. Good for us. We're thieves. But bigger than that, I want you guys to know why we have not industrialized yet. Some of you guys had some good ideas last week, and I asked, what's the solution to our impressment problem? Somebody said just industrialize. Why haven't we yet? It's a longer term process. A couple reasons. Reason one, the U.S. has a ton of land. That's one thing we have that the Europeans do not. So people that come here, do they want to work in a factory all day? No. They want to buy a farm, own some land, work outside, be self-sufficient. So since land is so abundant and cheap, we don't really have a factory working class. That's not why people are here.
It's I saw this in the meeting. I don't remember where it's at.
Talk to me. You don't remember what it said?
No, it's because I know it. I don't know who's saying it. Because I know that this was in the meeting. I just can't remember where in the meeting it was.
Uh-huh.
And that's what it
Think about it and then come back to us. So land is cheap. But the second reason is very important. You need money to industrialize. You need investment. You need to put a bunch of money in and know you're probably not going to make any money for a long time. Let me just give you an example, right? Say it costs you $100,000 to build a factory, just for fun numbers, yes?
Yeah.
And your factory is going to make you about $10,000 a year in profit. How many years do you need to be in business to make money?
11.
11 years. So you need a lot of, it takes a lot of upfront investment. And the U.S. at this point is not a society with a bunch of liquid or movable or accessible capital floating around. We don't have a lot of money. Because we've largely, up to this point, been a more bartering type economy. I make what I can, I grow what I can, I trade for the rest. But with we start to see some corporations, which look like those joint stock companies of colonization time, where we start pooling our money. Well, that's a little easier. If we pool our money, it's only 10 grand each, it's a little easier to start getting into the game. Not a lot of money. Third is labor scarcity. Not a lot of people that are in the United States. We don't have a very dense population. A lot of people, but we're all very spread out. Immigration solves this problem, mostly the Irish. Fourth, we cannot compete with Great Britain. They've been doing it longer, so that means they do it more efficiently, they do it cheaper, they do it faster, and we cannot compete with that. What do we put in place to compete with it? What makes us able to compete? Nope. The tariff. The tariff is basically built in so that we can compete with Great Britain. It's like training wheels for our economy. That's a way to put it, I think. That helps. And the fifth reason is the British have all these advantages and they don't let anybody else have them. They don't let anybody else have them. They keep their advantages like secrets. The British do not allow any mechanics or any mechanical machines to even leave the country. So Samuel Slater, like the godfather of American industrialism, of American fascism, he's smuggled out of Great Britain. Yeah, he's like kidnapped out. Come on, you're coming with us. Where are we going? America. What? Right? So we got him back for impressment. Right? We impressed Samuel Slater. One very important person from decades of impressment. So we begin this industrial process, a ton of economic growth, but we're going to hit a lot of these this year. We hit a little economic roadblock in 1819. About every 20 years, we have an economic panic. All the time. 1819, 1837, 1857, 1877. About every 20 to 25 years, there's an economic panic. It's a disaster. Everyone loses all their money, and it puts a slight halt. That's what there's 19. There's 37. See? They're up there. Yes. You could argue that it's just the laissez-faire economic cycle taking place. In terms of what we need for this class, not necessarily. But when you let the economy kind of regulate itself without government hands on the economy, then eventually, every single time it's caused by overinflation of something. Always. That's what you guys should know. Every panic is caused by the overinflation of something. In the case of 19, it's caused by the overinflation of currency and Western land. We let too many people buy Western land with loans they couldn't pay back. All this Louisiana Purchase land, all this Western expansion land.
Just like right now in 2007 when they were buying like houses and all that.
The recession of 07, 08 is the same thing with overinflation of the real estate market. Of course. I promise. Every financial panic is because we've put too much into one sort of thing. In the case of 19, it is Western land speculation. All right, we let this idiot take a loan to buy Western land. This idiot take a loan to buy Western land. This idiot take a loan to buy Western land. None of them can pay it back. And then when the government's like, hey, pay back that land, pay back that land, pay back that land, none of them can. The bank has no money. Everything goes to hell. Yes, sir.
Isn't there like things like check if we can?
Now they do.
Oh, back then there wasn't.
Nope. Because now that's why there's things like credit checks and all these things that are in place now. We'll get there, I promise. Right. So it's the first big recession of this market economy, this first big downshift of our new economy. I know, she's writing it the wrong place. And what happens as a result of it is we start seeing some more sectional tension. Sectional. Fun story. I'm going to use that word sectionalism a lot. My region against your region. Last year, Mr. Berkenkamp was my observer. He was in here once a week, just watch and see what's going on, give me feedback. I love it. And one of his first times in here, it was probably about November or so. He's taking notes, right? I pass out my handouts to whoever's in here. If you're gonna be in here, take some freaking notes, learn something. And I look at his notes, and he's writing about sectionalism, but it's
Sex. Sectionalism.
I'm like, what? What the hell do you think I'm teaching, bro? Sectionalism? No. Sectionalism. He's like, yeah, sectionalism. I'm like, no. This is history class. This is not health class or human emotions class. And he'd written it like 16 times. I was like, this is great. So if you see Mr. Berg, I'm asking about sectionalism, and make sure he knows it's not a sexual term. It is a But what we see with the Pentagon 1819 is Northerners say, to solve our economic problems, we need a higher tariff. Southerners say, to solve our economic problems, we need a lower tariff. Westerners say, the problem is the bank. It's the bank that asked for me to pay my loans back. Well, yeah, they gave you the... Never mind, Westerners. So it just demonstrates the three regions, as soon as things start going a little negatively, they're going to revert back to doing things their way, their section, their ideals. Is that clear? So when everything's going well, everybody's happy, on the same page, air of good feelings, life is good. But as soon as some tension arises, people go back to doing things in their own section's way. The same will hold true Wednesday when we talk about the Missouri Compromise. We talk about sectionalism over slavery. Cool. So now getting into the economic shifts, since that's kind of the big piece for the rest of today. Innovations play a huge role. Inventions will always play a huge role in American economic change. Some of the ones you should know. First is the steam engine. Engines are more efficient than people. Using steam power to move things. It's why almost all these early factories, almost all of them, are on waterways. So you need water turned to the water wheel, that's spinning everything around on them. That's more of a northern idea because it's a factory type of thing. In the south, we see some important changes to agriculture. Mechanical reapers. I don't know what the hell that means. I don't know how they work. I just know it's an example of even farm life becoming more industrialized as well. That even farm life is becoming more productive, more focused, more pushed towards industry and mass production. Yes?
Wouldn't it mean that you're just collecting something?
Sure.
To reap something that
Yeah, to collect mechanically. Absolutely. It's gonna fall. I know what it does.
Oh,
I don't know how it does it, right? It just goes through the crops and it picks up a bunch of crops and then there you go, you got crops. Boom. But then that allows you to not use as much manpower and use machine power and mass produce for faraway markets. The spinning jenny, very important. The spinning jenny. It's a faster way to make textiles out of raw material to textiles. So you use a spinning jenny powered by a steam engine and mass produce textiles. And the two most important are both by Eli Whitney. Eli Whitney's cotton gin changed American history forever. You could make an argument. I don't think it's a very historically accurate argument, but you could make an argument that without cotton, slavery would have died. We've begun to over-farm the areas that are heavily tobacco. Tobacco's not really been as productive or as profitable anymore. We start seeing a slight decrease in the amount of slaves in America post-Revolutionary War. It's like, I don't know. The minute the cotton gin is created, cotton becomes the next boom crop. Cotton is very labor intensive, it's a lot of people, and we see slavery skyrocket again. It almost looks like with slavery, it starts slowly, as you guys know. By the 1780s, it's a lot of slaves, but in terms of like percentage of population, it's still very small, below 10%. Slavery begins to level out. Early 1800s, cotton gin goes like so. I'll show you the numbers. It's insane. Because cotton becomes, for the U.S. in the 19th century, what tobacco was in the 17th century. So that, but times 1,000. Times absolutely 1,000. And the last piece you guys have to understand is interchangeable parts. Let me give you an example from modern times. I'm driving home today, yes? It's, still got 5 hours to go. I just want to go home. I'm driving home in 5 hours and I get a flat tire.
Cool.
What do? I'm a grown man.
You change your own
Buy a
tire.
new car. Change my wheel.
Yeah.
Go
I
home.
don't change the wheel, I change the tire. Yes, I change the tire. But it's true. No, wait, what did you say? Buy a new car because that part is broken. You know, that was your first mistake of the day. Why would I have to buy a new car if my tires broken? Because my car's broken. Now that's machinery pre-interchangeable parts. One part breaks, gotta throw the whole thing away. Interchangeable parts says that part breaks. Here's an idea. Just replace that part. Like what if I went home today and I had a broken window? Burn the whole house down. Get out the wrecking ball. Honey, we gotta move again. We had a broken window today. Time for a new house.
How about the broken child?
Oh, I got a lot of those. So, moral of the story, interchangeable parts makes it easier to invest in industrialization. Because you know if one piece of your machine breaks, you're not fully out of luck. But you can get a new piece, fix that machine, and go from there. So Eli Whitney plays a huge role in this process by, in both the North and the South, cotton gin and factory system with interchangeable parts. A lot of interchangeable parts are actually used early on in guns. That if part of your gun breaks, you don't need to get a whole new gun. You can just replace that part. It plays a role as well. So all of these increase what? Two things. Efficiency and production. Yeah, efficiency and production. This makes it more productive to produce more. The Telegraph plays a huge role as well in terms of, one of my favorite terms for A-Push, shrinking the world. So now Chris is in New Jersey, and I'm in Pennsylvania, and I'm farming stuff. I can find out from Chris how much demand there is for blank in New Jersey. So now I'm encouraged to produce more, and then I can communicate with him, I can communicate with her, I can communicate with her, and find out what's needed where, and ship my stuff where I can sell the fastest for the most amount of money. The Telegraph is like early text messaging. When I got my first cell phone when I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah, before that, 1896. It's wild, man. Yeah, now my first cell phone was that big ass Nokia, right, with Snake on it. And it's not; those things still live, absolutely, right? I love how as phones have gotten better, they've gotten less good. My phone can do 10,000 things, but if I look at it wrong, it breaks. Right? That phone could do 3 things, but that battery lasted 6 days. You could throw it off a 10-story building and it wouldn't even crack. Right? I think it was wild. I think it would be in my baseball bag, after practice on the bus. Get it out, it's the screen's all dusty, not a scratch, nothing. Good to go, right? It had one game, Snake. That was it. What? Oh, you don't know Snake?
I played the Google version.
There we go. So, moral of the story, telegraphs are early text messages. It's all with Morse code. Why is it called Morse code? Because Samuel Morse created it. Really? Yeah. And it sends alphanumeric messages that now we can communicate over minutes instead of weeks. That increases demand and supply and a more connected economy. So let's talk about cotton for a second, because cotton is a really big deal. So look at cotton in 1790. I got some numbers up here to blow your mind. In 1790, the country created or farmed 3,000 bales of raw cotton. Just cotton picked. It's a very labor-intensive crop because it's full of thorns and big seeds. And you guys know how cotton works. It's all stringy. And imagine a cotton ball, though, full of thorns and seeds and all kinds of prickly stuff and all sorts of terrible. So you have to get all that stuff out, and all you're left with is a little bit of cotton. Now, how much does cotton weigh? What weighs more, a pound of steel or a pound of cotton? Oh, I'm the idiot.
Steel.
Good. Yeah, steel, obviously. That's steel.
It's a pound.
Which one takes up more space? Which one takes up more space? How does it depend?
If you put if you have a pound, it's all pressed
What are you doing?
And then you have steel all pressed.
Pressed steel?
No, I'm saying like pressed juices. If you have like a little cube and just like put that in there.
So cotton takes up a lot of space because it doesn't weigh anything. So in 1790, because you have no engine, you're relying largely on slaves. One slave or one human can clean about 1 pound of cotton a day. So in a whole day, one person can make 1 pound of cotton. You with me? As soon as you have a cotton gin, one person operating the cotton gin can clean 80 to 100 pounds a day. So pre-cotton gin, cotton is a luxury item. Only 3,000 bales are produced a year in the United States. It's a very limited production of cotton. 3,000 bales. Y'all with me? Not a lot of cotton. It's too labor intensive. It's too expensive. Nobody wants it. It's only for the rich, rich, rich. Every one of your shirts right now is made of cotton. Your socks are made of cotton. Your shoes have a ton of cotton. Your drawers, probably cotton.
On my thong.
That's probably silk. Probably silk. Is it really shiny? Don't tell us about it. So, no, thank you. That breaks laws I'm not willing to break. So, check it out. By the years we're talking about, by about right now, 1820, we've gone from 3,000 a year to 334,000 a year. In 30 years, gone from 3,000 to 330,000. Let's go to the first year of the Civil War. 4.5 million. Thanks, Eli Whitney. Who picks that cotton?
Slaves.
And that's that increase. This kind of increase makes exponential growth look small, look slow. The growth of cotton is going to create an entire southern economy that is based solely on one plant. Look at these numbers. Just from 60 to 69, go from 3.8 million to 4.5 million. The growth from 3,000 to 4.5 million in 70 years is absolutely incredible. This is going to lead to regional specialization, as the South is going to specialize in cotton. It's going to lead to more push west, as people realize, oh, if I can get some land and slaves out here, out here, out here, out here, to Florida, it's going to push slavery west in huge numbers. And therefore, it's going to increase tenfold the demand for slaves. Because now it's like instant millionaire status. You have a big enough plantation, enough slaves, you're growing cotton, you're good to go. Here's some maps to show you. 1790, one dot is about 200 slaves. This is where our slavery is located. Where's most of the slavery?
Middle.
It's all in the South, sure. Where else?
On the coast?
On the coast. It's all here. It's on the west.
No, not that way.
Not that west, the other west?
No, no, not like that. Not that west, because you know how we used to have in something.
Not that west, the other west.
No.
It's mostly in.
We're the 13 colonies.
It's mostly in the Chesapeake in Virginia along the shore. By 1820, slavery has shifted west and gone further south. By 1860, it looks like this. Yep.
What's orange?
Everything in yellow, orange is cotton production. So this is still largely tobacco, sugar, indigo, some other stuff. But everywhere else in the country that is slave holding is also cotton producing. Where cotton goes, slavery follows, or vice versa. Where slavery goes, cotton follows. So cotton and slavery go heavily hand in hand as the institution of slavery spreads southward and westward. Historically speaking, this is known as the Black Belt because the density of slavery through these states is oftentimes more than white people. There's more slaves than free people in these states. More numbers to keep killing your mind with. The turquoise number is percentage of white people. The blue number is percentage of slaves. The red number is percentage of free black people. Take a minute, talk to your partner. What are some things you observe as you look at this infographic?
I know you're talking about slaves. I can't see the place.
Yeah, but only 25 is a slave. It's up the north, but it's the north of the south. Oh, that's what we're
City
looking
and South Carolina have more slaves than. So it's mostly a separation
Right.
between north and south.
So, Josue, I heard a good observation from you, sir. What do you have to say?
I said that the more south you go, the percentage of slaves compared to whites increases.
So it's true that the further deep into the south you get, slavery is denser or more dense. South Carolina is, of course, South Carolina. 57% of the population is slaves. 57%. But then we see Mississippi at 55%, Louisiana at 47%, Alabama at 44%, Georgia at 44%, Florida at 44%. This black belt is called that because of this density of slavery. Yes, sir.
What year was that?
This is in 1850.
Oh, we own Texas, right?
By then, yes. We've had Texas for about 6 years.
That's pretty
We'll
cool.
talk about that probably in this class, I would imagine. Like most of these things. So, that's Southern society. And now you see, and we'll talk about this again next week, how they're becoming more and more heavily reliant on slavery as an institution. But couldn't you make an argument this goes all the way back to Jamestown? Yeah, you can connect everything. They came here to get rich. Yeah, they found tobacco. Tobacco became cotton. All of it is reliant on free labor. From indentured servitude to temporary slavery to Bacon's Rebellion to slavery. Yep. You see? It's almost like everyday matters. So in the north, I see you acting like a dumbass. In the north, we begin a similar process with our textile manufacturing. What was previously the putting out system, don't get excited, the putting out system, in which people in their homes are largely on very small batches creating textiles out of raw materials. We see some technological advances that allow us to mass produce textiles as well. Where are all these textiles coming from?
North.
Southern cotton. Southern cotton is being, so these things go hand in hand. So this comes because of Samuel Slater. Here's an example of the early factory system where women operating these large spinning jennies, turning thread into cloth. What's up? But one of the early ones we should know is it's called the Lowell system. We'll talk about it a little more. The Lowell girls in Lowell, Massachusetts. Factory girls, where women are leaving their family farms or family homes, going to live at the factory in boarding houses, work on their own, make their own money when they're young, and then eventually getting married and going home to live with their families. So it sucks. The work sucks. The pay sucks. The conditions suck. But it does give women the exposure to the world they would have not had otherwise, and it allows women to experience some sense of social progress because they are on their own making their own quote-unquote decisions. But what happens with this early industrialization is our output goes way up. We're producing way more. That's a big deal. Producing more textiles. Does this require any great skill? No, you're just operating a machine with your foot. You're just creating textiles out of thread. It doesn't require any skilled labor. So unskilled labor gets opportunities. Where do they come from? Largely Ireland. It weakens these small businesses that used to do this small scale, these small artisan businesses, because they can't compete. It increases urbanization as people move to cities for these jobs. We finally start seeing some real American cities. And finally, I would argue by about 1850, maybe a little later, depending on how you want to argue it, the U.S. becomes more competitive in the global market, specifically with Great Britain. But I told you industrialization takes a long time. All right, that solution to the impressment problem, let's just industrialize. Sure, it took us 30 years. 30 or so years to get competitive with Great Britain. The most famous of these mills, these textile mills, is the Lowell Mill in Boston. There's a photograph of the Lowell Mill and the way it works. The Lowell girls are young women from the country, largely from farming middle to lower class families that are going to begin this process of female labor in the workforce. It really is the first good example of women in American history working outside the home. Women in American history working outside the home. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes on your page on, some text about this new factory system. We're going to do one at a time though. So, on the left-hand side, it's just bigger font than I usually use. It's fine. I got longer than usual, right? It's not that long at all. On the left-hand side, raise your eyes. All of them. I have an analysis of the female workers at the female workers in Lowell. So I'm going to have you read and identify just at the bottom what are some of the negatives, the downsides, the cons to this type of labor. We'll talk about it, then I'll have you read the right one, do the same thing. The right one's more about the system in general, not just the Lowell girls, but men, women, and children, okay? So take the first one, I'll give you 4. And then we'll talk about it. I'll go to the next one, I'll give you 4, the same thing, and then we'll go into the impacts in immigration, okay? So I'll give you 4. Just the left-hand side, just the Lowell girls, and you're identifying what are some of the negatives to this new style of work. 60 seconds. Just on the first side. You can read the start the second one if you want to. You're allowed.
Mister,
What's up?
we're only supposed to read the first one.
Yes. You got the second one, and I'm going to go back and ask a question.
No, go back.
You're good. It's a bad thing. All right. So, talk to me real quick. I'll give you time to chat, but I want to make sure that we honor the fact that I want to get done with the lecture today. Hilda, what's one of the downsides of this new labor system?
Well, basically saying how like women, they like where they sleep, like there's barely any space and like it's poorly ventilated, and that they work 13 hours a day during the summer, and during the winter they work from like daylight to like the dark.
Yeah, that's not good. Agreed. So conditions-wise, working and living, good. Chavez.
The first one that says, providing for times of sickness and old age should be more than counterbalance the difference in prices of wages and the expense of support and clothing.
Okay.
Saying that they're thinking short term, right? And not thinking what can happen later on.
At the very end, of this piece, it says the far greater number of fortunes accumulated by the North in comparison with the South shows that hiring labor is more profitable for capital than slave labor. Damn. So hiring your workers makes you more money than buying humans? That's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? Why? Go ahead.
I would say because you're paying them to do a specific job.
Uh-huh.
So they basically have control over them. Like if you have a slave, not you won't necessarily have true control over them. Like they might resist at times.
Okay. Potentially. When you have a slave, how long do you have them? When you hire these workers, how long do you have them? Temporary. So isn't this arguing that, like, by doing it this way, you avoid having to pay for, like, medical care and clothes and food for them for the rest of their lives, and instead you just get them at the prime of their life, and then get rid of them and get somebody else at the prime of their life for them? Huh. Interesting. Now, these Lowell Mills are advertised as something of a utopia for girls. You can come, get educated, learn about the world, make friends. It'll be great. Did we see anything here about learning or getting educated or anything like that? No, because it's too much work. All right, so one on the right, wage slavery in New England, is going to talk about the system as a whole. Take the same four, work on that one, and then by the end be able to tell me what are some of the problems with class and society. Standards for yourself was good. You said today's October 1st. You're back, right? You said you're back October 1st? Yeah. Good down? Good today. Come back in here. Where's your kids' stuff? The teacher's fresher. Not yet. All right, so I'm going to stop you there. I'm tired of the whispers. Big picture. This new class in American society. What can we say about them as a class? Go ahead, Chris.
They're constantly abused or not appreciated because they don't have any present skill in the labor that they do, and it's until Commonwealth v. Hunt where they don't have labor unions, so they can't really do anything about it. They get easily replaced.
And even with Commonwealth v. Hunt from your reading, great poll, great reference. That's why those things are out. Even then, labor unions are going to cease to have a lot of economic arguing power until well after 1900. This new working class is nothing to America because they are incredibly replaceable. If the immigrant boats are going to keep showing up, the work is going to still require no skill. You are very replaceable as a human being worker. So the textile factories do force women out of their homes. You can turn your page. We're almost done. Many women work in factories until they get married, and then they become housewives. This is going to give us our new era of women called the cult of domesticity, which encourages women to own the domestic sphere, to regulate the household, to do more in life than just be a baby producer. Run your house, run your domestics, be a good mother. As opposed to prior, when it's like, pop out as many kids as you can, send them out to work on the farm, milk some cows, and have more kids. So we see birth rates declining. People are having less kids. We see arranged marriages declining and much more child-centered, family-driven dynamics for a family. Cult of domesticity. It's an evolution of Republican motherhood. It's that next stage for women in Republican motherhood. But a lot of these women are going to go in the 1840s and 50s and play a huge role in reforming society. Realizing they can't make any money or impact politics. So we'll see next Monday, it was called the Antebellum Reform Movement. We're playing a huge role in these as well. So keep this in your minds, please. Here's a good image of the sphere of woman. Woman should be raising kids, nurturing families, owning the domestic side of things, while her husband is working in a factory. So with 10 minutes to go, and then our day is done, unfortunately. I'll teach you guys for all 6 hours of instruction a day. So I'll let you do it. We see that with infrastructure comes economic advancement and progress. For example, some things you should know. The Cumberland Road, here's my map. It goes from Illinois, middle Illinois, right where, if I continue with this map, this is where the Ohio River and the Mississippi River come together to become the Mississippi River. And now we can get goods from the Potomac River, which connects Washington, D.C. and the Chesapeake, all the way across this road, down and through the Mississippi River. All right, so just simple roads like the Cumberland Road are important because they facilitate more commerce, more trade. Next thing you should know is, of course, the very, very, very famous, still there today, Erie Canal, which does the same thing, but it connects New York City with the Great Lakes region. Right across, there's a river called the Albany River that goes north and south in New York. New York is, of course, the biggest harbor in the United States. So now our biggest harbor can go up a river and across a canal into the Great Lakes. And once you get into the Great Lakes, you can access the Mississippi River. So these projects are just trying to connect our American infrastructure in a way that facilitates better commerce and better trade. All of it is done with our new invention of the steamboat. Robert Fulton, super important name in this game, creates the first steamboat in American history. This is the first steamboat sailing up the Hudson River, and this allows us to actually travel upriver. What a concept. Now we don't think about these things. What's easier, walking uphill or walking downhill? Downhill. Y'all lazy. Downhill, right? A boat is easier to go downstream because it goes with the water. Steamboats allow us to go upstream, to ship stuff up the Mississippi River, up the Hudson River from New York. So the steamboat allows you to go wherever you want on water. It's a big deal. The first steamboats are very dangerous. About 1 in every 25 blows up. Kills everybody on board. It's not good. But when you have a fire source on a combustible engine powering your boat, it's not great for safety. They get that worked out over time. And finally, very early forms of railroads. Very early forms of railroads. In the late 1820s, we have small railroads between cities, like Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. By the 1840s and 50s, we'll have a ton of railroad. By the 1880s, we'll actually have a full financial panic, 1877, because we've built too much railroads. So eventually, railroads are going to crisscross the entire United States to the point where we have now too many railroads. So all of this, though, is built to make commerce and trade smoother and faster and more efficient. Here's a map. Here's 1840. Big roads and canals. Where are most of our roads and canals? Yeah. I would say most of the canals are here up. Would you guys agree with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a couple roads here, no canals. They're just using their rivers. Because if we let them build roads in our state, they're going to come for our slaves, brother, I'm telling you. Yeah. So we see in the market economy, the North and the West becoming very closely linked, with the South kind of still down here doing Southern things. The best evidence for this growth of infrastructure comes from cost analysis. Look at this. From 1785 to 1865, the price to ship everything goes down. You want to ship by wagon rates, it gets a little cheaper. Still very expensive. You want to ship by canals, way cheaper. Because there's more canals. You want to ship upstream, boom, invention of the steamboat, way cheaper. You want to ship downriver, cheaper. Railroad, cheaper. Because the more infrastructure we have, the cheaper it is to use that infrastructure to ship our goods. Steamboat, train, canals, it all really matters for the market revolution. Now the second benefit to this piece is travel time. It's not just goods, but people. In 1800, I'll trace the line so you can see it. In 1800, this is as far as you can get from New York City in 4 days. There's New York City, that's as far as you can get in 4 days.
What about 4 days?
What?
Like, what if you're sick and need to get down there for
Too bad. That's as fast as you can go in 4 days.
Yeah.
So just 30 years later, how much more of the country is accessible in 4 days? That's the point. We can go a week if you want. Church knows a week. You get there in a week, basically half the country. Whereas in a week before, all you could barely get to was not even to the frontier. Travel time. In 30 years, we've shrunk our world. We've shrunk our world. Now the last piece to get to is immigrants. The growth of factories leads to an increase in American cities. American cities mean industrial jobs. Industrial jobs means immigrants. In 1820, we have one big city. It's New York. That has over 100,000 people. By 1860, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10. And all of this comes off of Irish and German, what's called old immigration. Immigrants are going to come work in low-paying factories, the Irish, move west and work on small farms in like Wisconsin and Minnesota and Iowa, the Germans. And it's going to lead to a ton of hostility and prejudice in the U.S. that is anti-immigrant. That is one of these big recurring themes in American history. Who thinks America is anti-immigrant today? Raise your hand.
To an extent.
America is quite strongly anti-immigrant. This begins in the 1840s. And it's not because people are brown or black or orange or whoever else, it's because they are new. Old immigration is white, Irish, German, and absolutely detested because they're new. So I'll leave you with this for the day. It's a very early anti-Irish cartoon. The slide, make sure you guys finish up that text and the last couple slides about the effects. But I think it's pretty straightforward. You guys should be good to go. Be able to identify an economic effect, a social effect, a political effect. What caused all of this? All right. So I'll pass out your timeline and your chapter. The bell will ring in 2. And make sure I get chapter 14 before you go. Good job today.